Have you ever come across a figure who is a complete and total contradiction? A hero in one story and, well, a terrifying zealot in another? Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to use Daniel C. Matt's incredible book, Becoming Elijah, to explore one of the most fascinating transformations in religious history. Yep, we're talking about the prophet Elijah.
So, on one side of the coin, you've got the biblical Elijah. This guy is intense. We're talking calling down fire from the sky, causing a kingdom-wide drought, and after this epic showdown, slaughtering hundreds of rival prophets. But then, there's this completely different version of Elijah from folklore, a gentle, kind hero who helps the poor, saves people in trouble, and is supposed to be the one who announces the Messiah.
So what gives? Who is the real Elijah? And how in the world did this figure of fire and fury become a symbol of hope and kindness? That's the mystery we're going to unravel together. To figure this out, we've got to look at these two completely different faces of Elijah. Let's start with that original biblical paradox. Okay, let's wind the clock way, way back. Because to really get this transformation, you have to meet the original Elijah, the OG Elijah from the biblical book of Kings. He's painted as this zealous, fiery prophet, a fierce champion for his God in a world that he sees as totally corrupt. So picture this. It's the 9th century BCE. We're in the northern kingdom of Israel. And it's a time of major religious conflict, mostly thanks to King Ahab and his infamous wife, Queen Jezebel, who were pushing the worship of the god Baal. This is a stage where our prophet of fire makes his entrance. And man, when Elijah shows up, things happen fast. He just appears out of thin air, marches up to the king, and declares a drought that brings the kingdom to its knees. He performs these incredible miracles, like bringing a dead child back to life. But the peak of his story, it's this epic showdown on Mount Carmel, where he takes on and defeats 450 prophets of Baal. And then, get this, in an act of just pure hardcore zealotry, he has them all killed. We're definitely not talking about a gentle soul here. You know, the Bible gives us this really raw, vivid image of him. He's described as a hairy man with a leather loincloth bound round his waist. This isn't some polished guy from the king's court. No way. He's a rugged, wild man from the wilderness, just as untamed as the divine fire he calls down. But, and this is a huge but, just when you think you have him all figured out, the story takes a massive turn. After all this fire and all this fury, Elijah's time on earth doesn't end with a normal death. It ends with a profound mystery. And that moment, well, it changes absolutely everything. Yeah, his exit from the world is literally the key that unlocks his entire transformation. It's such a spectacular departure that it basically left a giant question mark hanging in the air for thousands of years. Get this, Elijah doesn't die. He just vanishes. He's taken up into heaven in a whirlwind, riding a chariot of fire. And because he never technically died, well, that left later storytellers with this fascinating possibility. Elijah could come back. This one single event is the whole pivot point for his story. It created this space where people could start to ask, okay, if Elijah came back, who would he be? Would he still be that same harsh zealot? Or could he be someone different? And that question leads us right into the next chapter of his story. This absolutely incredible makeover from a fearsome zealot into a beloved hero. So in the centuries that followed, in rabbinic writings and folktales, a whole new Elijah starts to emerge. See, as different communities faced their own struggles, they needed hope. And so they started to see Elijah differently. That fiery prophet was slowly softened, reshaped, and transformed into one of the most beloved and cherished figures in all of Jewish tradition. I mean, his whole job description gets a rewrite. The man who once ordered a mass slaughter, now he appears in stories as a helper of the poor, a rescuer of people in peril. He becomes a healer, a wise teacher, and, maybe most famously, the one who will return to announce the Messiah. His defining quality is no longer zealotry, it's compassion, a total 180. And what's so wild is that this transformed Elijah didn't just stay in ancient folklore. Nope, his presence is still felt in a really big way today, and his influence goes way beyond just one faith. His reach is just massive. I mean, in Judaism, people still pour a cup of wine for him at every Passover Seder, waiting in anticipation for his return. In Christianity, the New Testament draws a pretty direct line, identifying John the Baptist with Elijah. And in Islam, there's this mysterious, immortal figure named Al-Khidr, the Green One, who helps travelers and seekers, and he shares a ton of traits with Elijah, like immortality and helping folks in need.
You know, the 16th century mystic Moses Cordovero just nailed it. He said Elijah became something more than a prophet. He became a symbol of the bridge between the human and the divine, this mysterious force for good that walks among us. When you really step back and look at it, the journey of Elijah is a masterclass in the power of storytelling. It shows us how a culture can take a figure of harsh, righteous anger and, driven by its own need for hope and comfort, transform him into this universal symbol of compassion and redemption. And that brings us right back to the book's title, and it leaves us with a pretty big question, right? If this one figure could make such a profound journey from zealotry all the way to compassion, what does it mean for us in our own lives to become Elijah? Which part of his story do we choose to embody?